Good evening. This is Saturday, the 24th of October 2020. This is the Democratic Alliance's Labour Report. Thank you for watching, it's greatly appreciated. Today we're going to discuss government's strange belief that they can create jobs. In fact, they're borrowing money from the international community to pay salaries. They've committed over 100 billion rand over 3 years to create some sort of stimulus for jobs. All this is very strange stuff that we need to discuss today. This is amid the greatest retrenchment crisis across the board this country's ever seen. 50% of our working population have now found themselves without jobs. Government should finally recognize that it is the private sector that is the answer. There is no incentives given to the private sector to create jobs, and we need to look at it very carefully. The Democratic Alliance laments the issue that government feels that they can create jobs instead of enhancing the process to create a job creation environment for the private sector. In essence, NEDLAC, which is supposed to be the negotiating body with the private sector, trade unions and government, is failing, and we need to look at that as well. Hi, I'm Michael Bagram, the Democratic Alliance Labour spokesperson in our parliament. In essence, it has been predicted that it will take more than 5 years for us to get back to the employment figures that we saw last year. And if you recall, last year we were one of the worst employment figures in the world. We had reached almost 40% unemployment in South Africa, and that was said to be the worst in the world at the time. Now, even to get back to that, it's going to take us 5 years. This lockdown has created absolute havoc in this country, havoc to the extent that people are literally starving everywhere, across the board, in every single industry. It is unbelievable. Government does not want to believe that they cannot create jobs. Government has a strange belief that communism or socialism is the answer, and yet it's failed for so many years world over. And somehow our president is still harking back to that issue. I don't understand it. Economists the world over have told us that it is small business that's going to be the engine room for job creation in South Africa. We have a workforce that is not highly trained, not highly skilled, and we need to absorb many of those people within the workforce in South Africa today. It's urgent. It's not something that we can wait 5 years for 10 years. We keep seeing plans, enormous plans. Our president every year declares another new plan to create jobs. Our president has job summits, has gatherings in Darbas, Bosparades, you name it. He keeps having this. We keep talking, we don't do. And we need to ensure that small business is in fact going to thrive in this country. And the only way we can do that is to, first of all, pull up the lockdown. We're still in level 1. We're still in a situation where the tourism industry has been completely hobbled. It's a nightmare. And we know that tourism is one of the few industries in South Africa that creates revenue. We know that it brings in the foreign money. We know that tourism feeds so many other industries. And we also know that tourism itself is a leader onto many other jobs that people can feed themselves and their families. We need to see this now completely released from this lockdown. The lockdown has caused all our troubles, subsequent to the worst economy in the world. That lockdown must be pulled up immediately. We must recognize that the destruction of the economy has been taking place under an ANC government. We must recognize that over and above it being destroyed, we then imploded by calling a lockdown, a harsh lockdown on the South African economy, again by an ANC government. One only hopes and prays that this government would turn to the business community and say, how do we do it? How can we get back to where we were 20 years ago? How can we get back to an economy that is thriving? We see people in Parliament, in cabinet posts, who have never even run a spaza shop. They are unbelievable. They seem to think they can run the economy without turning to the business community and asking for advice. I see that President Ramaphosa has at least now said that we do need to turn to the private sector. Let's hope it's just not talk again and not hot air puffing out of his mouth like we often see. And let's hope that with this statement we're going to get back to some of the advice that we receive from the private sector as to how do we correct things. We see, and I'm reading from this, the Future of Jobs report from the World Economic Forum. They tell us that there's going to be a major destruction of jobs because of this fourth industrial revolution in South Africa. They tell us that we're not ready. We haven't trained our pupils. We haven't trained our learners, our university students. We're not feeding them into the workplace with the correct skills. So we need to correct not only the economy, but also obviously the system whereby we're training people. We need to have a re-look at it. We need to turn to the educators and say, again, reach out to the business community. Have that discussion. Who needs training? What training? And how are we going to actually do it? What does the workforce of the future workforce of the fourth industrial revolution look like? Because this is not working. It can't be business as usual. Despite this, all this that I'm telling you, is that the cabinet last week agreed to give a further 10.5 billion rand to SAA. Money we don't have. I don't know where they're getting it. They're borrowing money to pay salaries, and yet we're going to spend 10.5 billion rand on SAA. It's just a deep, dark hole. They're throwing money down the drain for a vanity project called SAA. How ridiculous is that? I mean, when you have a look at all the state-owned enterprises, all of them are bankrupt, every single one. I can sit here for hours and name each one to you and explain to you how they're bankrupt, how they need money. They're leaning on government for money, a government that doesn't have. Even our finance minister had to put off the medium-term budget for a later date. He's probably scratching around in a bare cupboard. He can't find the money. I don't know where it's going to come. What we do need to do, and what the Democratic Alliance has been calling for a long time, is deregulate. Release small business. They can't just survive, they must thrive. The only way we're going to do that is deregulate. Take that small business sector, uncouple them from the bargaining councils, deregulate them from the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, deregulate them from the Labour Relations Act. The small business sector is our future. So thank you for listening to me today. It's Michael Bagram, Labour spokesperson, Democratic Alliance. Thank you.